Good morning. I'm going to give you 4 options, and you each get 1 vote. No cheating, all right? So the first one, I want you to think about how you feel about your finances. So where are my joyful people? Who out there is feeling joyful about their personal finances? How many of you are feeling kind of okay about your personal finances? Okay. Where are my lightly terrified people? And the fully terrified people. Is there any brave souls? We've got a couple of fully terrified people. Okay. So you're doing better than the national average by a long shot. And that's what I want to talk about today. If I think about the corporate world, we're more stressed than ever before about our work, but we're also very, very upset about our finances. So I worked in the corporate world for 35 years, companies like Apple, IBM, Rogers, and Dell. And every year, we sort of crank things up a little bit. We look for ways to take out a couple of headcount. We had to drive up the revenue another 10 or 20%. And on that went. So there's more emails and more work. The productivity had to keep going up, and the headcount kept coming down. And after a while, we took a look at our people, and we found they didn't really look all that good. And so that gave rise to this whole trend of workplace wellness. How do we actually help people now that we've beaten them up beyond repair? How do we now bring them back to life somehow? Let's get a corporate wellness program on the go. And oftentimes those started in the cafeteria. And we took a look at what we were serving people in the cafeteria, and we thought, well, this isn't going to work. So what we did is, Trump style, we put tariffs on the unhealthy food. And the problem was people couldn't afford lunch anymore. So then we thought, hey, why don't we subsidize the healthy food? And we had a lot of hungry, grouchy people in our workplace, but nobody really got that much more well than they were before. So then we started looking at some other things. What about having workplace health and wellness? So get some on-site workouts happening. And that led to some problems that I won't get into. But one of the big problems that it led to was that people tend to give up, 80% of people give up on their fitness program within 5 months. So that wasn't terribly successful. So then what else can we do to help people? What about a smoking cessation program? And given that only 11% of Canadians smoke, and given that smoking rates decline rapidly as incomes rises, those kinds of programs would be good for both of the people in your company who could take advantage of it. So there has to be something else we can do to really help people with their wellness, and I think there's a few stats that really tell the story. Let me start with this one. And yes, you read that correctly. What percentage of Canadians are less than $200 from financial insolvency? You ready? 46% of them. It's stunning. If you think that's not happening in your company, you're wrong, because this affects all of us as Canadians, and it's not limited to people who are making $10,000 or $20,000 a year. Massive problem. Looking at it for another angle, percentage of Canadians that are worried about going bankrupt this year, an incredible 33%. You start to get a picture of just how pervasive these kinds of issues are. I'll give you one more that is really quite something, is this notion of savings rate. So you're giving people paychecks in your company. What percentage of that are they able to put away? So if you go way back in time, 1981, people were putting away 20% of their paychecks. It's almost zero now. At 20%, you can retire comfortably at about age 45 or 50. At 1.84%, which is where we're at right now, you can retire never. Or as a friend of mine says, he's got it all worked out. He's only going to have to work 10 years after he dies to pay all his bills. So big issue. Another one, I've changed the number on the top left 5 times now in the last 9 months. This is the percentage of what we owe as Canadians relative to how much we make in a year. This is an all-time high, 179%. Putting it another way, 70% of millennials permanently carry a credit card balance. They never pay it off. Interest rates like 22, 24%. Massive issue. And so if we take a look at retirement, the average Canadian retires with the massive sum of, wait for this one, $184,000. Now, $184,000 is a lot of money, but not if you have to live on it for 40 years. Of the Canadians that don't have a government or a company pension plan, 50% of them have less than 1 year's worth of resources to retire on. And remember, we're living longer than ever before. So major, major issue. But I think about the workplace, the Center for Financial Innovation, this is out of the US, their number is that 85% of people are significantly stressed about their finances, and they bring that stress into their job. It's given rise to this notion of presenteeism. You have people who are actually there on site at your company, but they can't focus on their job because they're too freaked out about their money. PwC, this is a Canadian and US study, and they took a look at it in their study on what's happening with financial wellness, and they found that the most requested benefit that people don't have is help with their personal finances. Second big finding they had is that people are now routinely tapping into their long-term savings, their RSPs and their RESPs, to fund their current obligations. Massive, massive issue. And so I thought I'd do something about it. So I wrote this book, Cash Flow Cookbook, and I gave up the corporate world about a year ago, figuring I'd retire and, relax. And the problem has been that this has kind of taken off because everybody's got massive concerns about money. Most personal finance books they all say the same thing. They say save 10% and invest it in mutual funds or exchange-traded funds, and eventually you'll get to wealth. But when you talk to Canadians, the big problem, they don't have 10% to invest, so they can't get out of this treadmill that they're all stuck on. So that's what the book did. It's become a Toronto Star column, and I'm spending all my time now racing across the country and into the US speaking about it and trying to help people with it. So just to give you a taste of how we can actually concretely help people, I don't think it's hard. I'm going to take one of your employees, I've called her Jenny, and I thought we'd do a little bit of adjusting on her finances. We're going to do things that are minimal effort, minimal sacrifice, no spreadsheets, no budgeting, no arguing. And the question is, could we double her net worth upon retirement? How many think we could double her net worth on retirement by making a few adjustments? How many people think we could triple it? Quadruple? Numbers are starting to go down. Let's take a look. So here's Jenny. She's 22 years old. She's single. I've made her an engineer because I'm one, so I have a little bit of a home team bias. She's making $65,000 a year. She doesn't have any savings yet, but she's putting away $250 a month. So let's take a look at how Jenny's going to do with her retirement. Average Canadian retires with? People are still thinking about the rappers. $184,000. So how's Jenny going to do? She's going to land at $300,000, which is not a great retirement, but it's 50% better than the average Canadian because at least she's putting something away. So I want to make 4 very simple changes. In Cash Flow Cookbook, I show $13,250 of monthly savings ideas, all with minimal effort, minimal sacrifice. So we're just going to do a few of those just to give it a test drive here. So, like most people her age, she's carrying a constant credit card interest. 70% of millennials, mentioned before, are paying it off. So this is about $10,000. It's spread over 4 different cards. So we really want to go after that and get rid of that debt because that's $200 a month. So we're going to slow down on the spending, get that stuff paid off, and try and stay within a world where she pays her credit cards every month. How much difference does that make? Well, suddenly she's retiring now with close to $600,000. It almost doubles her situation with a pretty small change. Second thing we're going to do is reduce her dining out costs by $200 a month. How do you do that? You bring lunch. It's pretty simple. I make my own lunch. I make a week's worth in advance, different kinds of rice and beans or whatever, loaded in little Tupperwares, and boom, 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 away we go. It doesn't take me 15 minutes to make a week's worth of lunch. It's very, very simple. Or you go to restaurants and start ordering tap water. Some simple changes. Maybe you split a dessert with your colleague. Maybe you have a couple of drinks together at the house before you head out for dinner with your group, okay? So some simple changes, reducing dining out costs. There's recipes on my website, pretty simple to do. Whoa, so now she's retiring with $800,000. At that point, her financial future is looking really, really good. Simple changes, nobody talks about it, never taught in school, typically not taught in the workplace. We can make a small change, make a big, big difference for people. Let's go on to clothing purchases. So when I talk about clothing, people go, oh, no, I really like nice clothes. Here's an interesting stat. What percentage of our clothes that we buy do we ever wear? Ever wear? Study after study, you know what the number is? 20%. Average Canadian spends 6% of their income. So Jenny here, 6% of her $65,000 on clothes. She could double the clothes that she wears and still put several $1,000s a year investing. So it's not about having fewer nice clothes. It's about getting clothes that we actually want to wear. Let's make that change. Now she's retiring with $1.1 million. Starting to look really good. And when Jenny graduated, she just went and got an apartment because she needed an apartment. She never actually thought about getting a roommate. As humans, we're pack animals. One of our biggest problems is loneliness. Loneliness is another huge wellness area. So what happens if we get Jenny a roommate? In Toronto, it's worth much more than $800 a month to have a roommate versus living alone. So I'm taking a really conservative tack. So what happens? So now she's going to retire with $2 million. And this is sort of central to what I talk about in Cash Flow Cookbook, what I do in workshops with employees, what I do with wealth companies, and what I do at schools. Okay? Simple changes, easy to implement, massive difference. Is Jenny going to spend any kind of time worrying about money? No, she's going to be focused on her job. She's going to be present with what she's doing. Okay? So, next steps. We've got a breakout session that I'm going to do later on. Let's get a conversation started about financial wellness. I'm stunned at the number of companies. They've got yoga, they've got Tai Chi, they're subsidizing apples, and they're not helping people with something they really, really need help with, which is their financial wellness. Okay? So you can email, we can chat more. Gord at cashflowcookbook.com. Subscribe, get the blog post. I don't sell your emails to the Russians. And if you want to grab, another copy, go to Cash Flow Cookbook. Code is IMAGINE, and you get 20% off incremental books. Thank you very much. Thanks.